Welcome to Brick by Brick, Building Wealth Through Homeownership. I am Kim Von Dohren, your realtor.
And I'm your banker, Ed Marko. So we did our podcast all about credit, and that really spurred a lot of questions about how do I get out of debt? What do I do if I have poor credit? How do I dig my way out of this?
Yeah, because in order to buy a home, you typically have to minimally pay down your debt. So this conversation is directed to folks who have debt that is either current or even delinquent debt. We want to be able to help you sort out how do we move you from being in debt to at least manageable amounts of debt that you can get a new home.
So I know you mentioned in the past you worked at Money Management International.
Yeah.
And this is what you did for a living for a little while. It's from a past life. You don't do that anymore.
Right.
By the way, we'll talk about a couple of different companies in here. We do not work for these companies. We're not endorsing these companies. We just are familiar with them and we have faith in them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of credit repair agencies out there. Most of them are criminals, not all of them, but most of them. If you don't have much money and somebody's asking you for $500 for them to help you, that's probably a bad sign. The companies that we're going to talk about, one is Neighborhood Housing Services. I am involved with this organization. They are a great organization. You can Google them. And then I think Money Management International as well. Also a very good organization. And I know way back in the before times.
Yes. And they're both nonprofit agencies, which I think is what is important to say. They are not in business to make a profit. They're in business to serve people.
Correct.
Yeah.
So anyway, you are really an expert on this on a different level than I am. Where would somebody start?
So I think if you have debt that you're drowning in, which a lot of people are, one of the first steps that you need to take is you absolutely have to do a budget. I know that's a bad word to a lot of people, but it is the thing that will give you the plan to begin paying down your debt. So I would say the very first thing you need to do, if you can do it on your own, you should do it on your own. If you cannot do it on your own, then you can seek out like one of the organizations we mentioned to have them help you do a budget. Now, there's no in-person offices, I don't believe anymore for money management, which was formerly Consumer Credit Counseling Services. I did work there. I did counseling and I did education there. And yes, it was a very long time ago. However, they will do a budget with you and they offer something called a debt management program. And a debt management program is one where you take revolving debt, credit card debt, and you put it into their program. And the benefit is that you get a reduction in the interest rates. And not, this isn't something that you as a consumer has to do. They've negotiated this on between themselves and their clients. So that's already done. You get that benefit just by participating in their debt management program. Now, once you're in the program with the reduced rates, you're still paying back your debt at 100%. You're not paying back less than the full balance, which is how it appears on a credit report when you don't pay back the full amount and you negotiate down the amount, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but it does show on your credit report. So will a debt management program for that matter. And they both will have consequences to your score. But if you have this debt, you can't buy a house anyway. So you may as well find a program that will help you to pay it back and get yourself started on the path to homeownership.
Yeah, certainly if you have delinquent debt, you're not going to qualify for a mortgage under really any circumstances that I know of. You have to have all of your delinquent debt satisfied, regardless of the type of mortgage you're getting. That's a federal guideline. It's one of those things that's kind of carved in stone, and that stone is covered in gold. You have to have your delinquent debts satisfied. They don't have to be paid in full. It doesn't have to be a perfect loan. It just has to be satisfied. And that's one of these things that happens when you go into a debt management program. You're letting the lenders know when they see that you did that you took the initiative to correct some bad decisions. That's where most bad debt comes from, is bad decisions. You borrowed more than you could afford to pay. Otherwise, you would have paid it, right?
Right.
But then you realized that you borrowed more than you could pay. And it might not have been through any fault of your own. Maybe you lost a job. Maybe somebody in the family died. You had some kind of a medical expense. It doesn't matter what the reason is. What matters is, again, I think I said this earlier, how you react to the circumstance.
Right.
That's what that shows. When you take the initiative to reach out and try and correct it or negotiate it, that shows up in your credit report and lets lenders know, hey, even when these people have a problem, they do something about it.
Right.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
And you said reach out. Now, reaching out, because here's the thing with credit repair, you are asked to pay for their services. And the truth is that they're doing something you can do yourself. So you don't actually have to pay somebody to do it. And they charge fees that are excessive, in my opinion. However, having said all of that, could the consumer reach out directly to the credit card company,
Absolutely. Yes.
ask for a reduction in interest rate on their own?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. I would say, which is unfortunate, that you have more leverage when you're delinquent than you do when you're current
Absolutely.
sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they want their money.
Mhm.
And if they think that this will help you to pay them, they may be more negotiable, but maybe not. Who knows? But the other thing that you and I had talked about previously in a private conversation was about negotiating down your debt.
Correct.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So yeah, you can negotiate down your debt, and in certain circumstances, it's the only thing you can do. And when it is the only thing you can do, you do that. However, be aware that when it gets marked on your credit report, it's going to say paid not as agreed,
Mm-hmm.
or paid less than obligated, or words to that effect. So that lets future lenders know that although you did reach out, you really didn't fulfill your end of the bargain. Whereas when you're using a payment plan, you are paying the whole debt. If your credit card company had you set up at 30% and now they're only getting 8 or 9 or 10,
Tragic.
yeah, my heart does not bleed for them. Even as a lender, my heart doesn't bleed for them. I think most credit, and you've heard me say this before, most credit card companies I view as predatory.
Mm.
I'm not an advocate for credit cards in any way, shape, or form.
So we're not getting any Citi or Visa endorsements anytime
No, that's not going to
soon.
happen. You're not going to hear us pitching for Capital One. Anyway, not that there's anything wrong with Capital One. I just don't like them. Anyway, one of the things that you talked about earlier, though, was payment strategies.
Mhm.
Like, there is a definite way to rapidly pay off credit card debt if you know the secret. And you know the secret, I know the secret, but you're so good at explaining this. Go through that. Let's say I have 4 credit cards that I owe almost the same amount of money on. One's at 30%, one's at 25%, one at 20, and I got one I get 5% for 2 years on. What do I do?
So there's 2 ideas. One is pay the lowest, the one that has the lowest balance off first and make your way up.
Mm-hmm.
The other way would be to choose the card that has the highest interest rate and pay that one off first. But the idea in both those concepts of the direction you go, the idea is that you are paying the minimum payment on 3 of those credit cards. And on the 4th, whether that's the one with the lowest balance or the one with the highest interest rate, you're going to put as much money as you possibly can to pay that card every single month. Then after that one's paid off, you're going to take all that same money you were putting on the first one, add onto that the minimum payment of the next one, and now just pay that one down. So by the time you get to the last one, you should have the largest amount of money that you've been paying each month so that it pays down even faster. So it will pay down faster as you go along because the amount you're paying each month will go up. But just pay the minimum payment so you meet your obligation on 3, and on 1, throw everything you have at it to pay it down as fast as possible, and then move on to the next one and the next one and the next one.
The other thing that happens, and I've seen this happen 50, if not 100 times in my lifetime, I've watched this happen to people. When you pay off that first credit card, it's it's so it's such a joyous day. You've actually accomplished a goal. You know you can continue, and you know you can get the other two or three or however many they are knocked out once you get the one done.
Yes.
So it's important that you start and stick with that. But that's the best strategy that I've ever heard. It's the only one that I know of that actually works. When it's worked, it works 100% of the time. Um, so
You don't want to close the cards though. Once they're paid off, we want to keep them open. If you have to cut them up and throw them away, or we used to always tell people you could freeze it in a block of ice and put it in your freezer. And then that way, at least you have some time. You can't make an impulse decision because you got to thaw it out.
Right, exactly. My wife keeps our unused credit cards in a booklet in a safe in our house. And the only time that she'll pull that credit card out is when we are specifically going to use that because there's a specific benefit to using that credit card at that time.
Right.
And and when it's done, it goes right back in the safe.
Right.
That way we're not tempted to do anything stupid.
Right.
We're very good with money but we use tools like that to discipline ourselves. That's called self-discipline. If it takes a safe to hide your credit card in so you can't get at it, and that's the kind of discipline you need to do it, then you should do it because I do it.
Yeah.
If I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah. I really believe you have to put strategies in place that work for you. You have to be able to identify what are my weaknesses, where am I going to get myself in trouble, and then plan so that you can't let that happen. That's really what you have to do. Pretending that you're going to suddenly change a behavior you've had for 45 years of your life and suddenly now you're going to be different is probably unrealistic. So instead say, okay, well, my pattern of behavior is this. So there's a good chance now that that credit card's paid off, I may try to go and use it. So don't give yourself access to it. Whatever that looks like, create a strategy that is specific to you individually so that you set yourself up to succeed. Don't close the credit card.
Yeah, don't close the credit card. That'll harm your score.
Yes.
Uh, on that note, though, it's all about being honest with yourself. Like
Yes.
back to the budget thing. When you're setting up your budget, you need to be honest with yourself. How much do you eat? Do you gamble? Do you consume adult beverages? Do you smoke?
Mhm.
Everything if you stop on your way to work and you buy a $2 box of Skittles, that's got to be in your budget.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, your budget's not going to work.
Yes.
When people put together budgets, I see them do it, and they'll have 10 things in their budget. And it'll be the electric bill, the rent, the car payment, and maybe the insurance, and sometimes food. Every once in a while, entertainment and the cable bill. But nobody's putting in chicken fingers on a Friday with
Yes.
2 beers and a shot of tequila. And that needs to go in the budget.
Yes.
Everything that you do needs to go
Yes.
into that budget. Be honest with yourself. You got in this situation probably because you weren't honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. I mean, it might be different. Maybe you had a medical emergency or something like that, and this will help under any circumstances. But honesty really is the best policy.
And I know people don't like the word budget. I used to do it as a joke. When I was teaching financial education, I would say stand in the front of class and say, when I say the word budget, how do you feel? And then I'd make people tell me how they felt. None of them said anything positive. I, on the other hand, had come to understand how powerful and freeing that word is. And so I stood there with utter excitement and enthusiasm to teach the budgeting class, and they thought I was nuts. But it was fun. And really, a budget is the most freeing thing you will ever do for yourself because what it does is it gives you permission to spend that money.
Exactly. I put my budget on a Google Calendar that I can access from anywhere on the planet. If my car payment is due on the 25th, every 25th of the month, there's an entry on my Google Calendar for that. If we go out every 2 weeks to a restaurant for dinner, that dinner date and how much I'm allowed to spend on that dinner date is in that calendar. My electric bill, everything goes in that calendar. That's the way I do it. You can do it however you want.
Now, some people will say, well, that's going to take all the spontaneity out of my life, Ed. I don't live like that. Like, how am I supposed to? So what I do in that scenario, what I used to do, my husband thought I was insane. I literally accounted for almost every single solitary dollar that I spent. If you're not self-disciplined, if you do just stop at, the convenience store or the gas station and you want to buy something, what I do is I would account for that. I would say, I put clothing into my budget every single month, and haircuts and, things people forget to put in there, but you're going to spend the money on them. And the good news is if you don't, then you get to carry it over to the next month if you want to, or you can put it in savings or do something else with it. But you have to say, well, so this is what we should tell folks is the way in which you start a budget is to spend 2 weeks collecting, I was going to say receipts, but most of us don't get receipts anymore, but collecting either a tally or receipts for every single thing you spend in the course of 2 weeks. Every single, and I mean every pack of gum, every chicken nugget, every shot of tequila. How much did I spend? Then double that and you have 4 weeks or a month. Now you know what your expenses truly are. So if you find that you're stopping at convenience stores 2 or 3 times a week and that tally is something, $50 to $100, you got to put it on your budget.
Right. And a way to be, I am the least spontaneous person you will ever meet. I literally live by that Google Calendar. My wife is the most spontaneous person you will ever meet. She takes X amount of dollars per week and puts it away. She calls it her funny money. And when she gets enough funny money, she'll just grab me and say, we're going to go do this. And I go because I know she's got the money to do it. And we've been doing that for 20 years. Mm-hmm. It's just, not quite, but almost 20 years. Yeah. Wow.
I will say this. I am someone who did it all wrong and had to learn how to do it right. And it is a journey. You aren't somebody typically who is going to live their life one way and tomorrow I'm going to completely live my life a whole new way. Right. Where I am today is a path that I took to get here, and things improved over time. So don't expect yourself to be perfect when you're changing your behaviors and habits. Right. Expect that you're going to make mistakes, give yourself forgiveness, and then keep on going.
Absolutely. So the budget is kind of like lets you know where you are.
Yes.
The debt getting paid down is the goal.
Yes.
That payment plan with the payment strategy is the roadmap to get you where you need to be.
Yes.
So you've got to be honest with where you are and honest with where you want to get to. Mm-hmm. And if you do those things, you will get yourself in a situation where your credit's going to be in excellent condition. You're going to feel a lot better about yourself, and you're going to be a better decision maker. If this helped you in any way, share it with a friend. If you've got questions, as always, leave them. But until next time, I'm Ed Marko.
And I'm Kim Von Dohren.
You have been listening to Brick by Brick. Be sure and subscribe, post questions for future episodes, or comment. This is a Super Squirrel production, Super Squirrel Studios, Stony Creek Mills, Pennsylvania.